Hi there, this is Lori with God, Aliens, and a Cup of Coffee. My partner in crime, Donna Raphael Schreiber, will be on, maybe, I don't know. And anyway, this is an encore presentation with Stephen Laplume and with Larry Warren, who is also one of our co-hosts. And who knows, probably Steve will be on a few times after, because we're just having a lot of fun. And every time we're on, we get some new information. We were talking last time about his book, Rendlesham Forest, and we learned some new insights about his mother and father getting a phone call from Chief Master Sergeant or Master Sergeant Lee
I don't
Swain.
was it. I thought he was a senior master sergeant.
He probably
Senior.
was. He probably
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, senior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was on the security side, so I
Oh
didn't
yeah.
know. But this is kind of like a to be continued. One of the things I was reading in Steve's book, the preface, was the fact that you got the gift of an acute memory. And I remember
Yeah.
you telling me about that. And so does Larry, because Larry's got, I think we must, all three of us actually have like a, a video camera going in our
Yeah.
mind. I
Yeah.
found, especially when I was there at Bentwaters, I was hypersensitive. I think as soon as I touched the ground, I was like, something's wrong, so I was on some kind of alert in my head. Um, do you, and I was not a nice person back then. And,
No.
but anyway, who was, right?
Yeah. I was downright evil
I
back
was a
then.
nice person, actually. And that got me in trouble.
Yeah. Actually, I was a downright bad person back then. I mean, I
Would,
make no apologies. I made my own choices, and I cut my own throat on what I did through life. So.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, but you definitely had goals and you did whatever you put your mind to.
Well, it's funny you mention that. I took a psychology test a while ago with my kids because we were trying to figure out how they learn. So we took the Myers and Briggs test,
Yeah, mm-hmm.
and because we wanted to see like my one daughter is more hands-on, the other one's more bookwormy type, that sort of thing. So we just approach them differently when trying to teach them subjects. And I came up with an INFJ, which is like really rare. And my wife
Wow.
is my wife is instantly going, "Oh, you get the same personality as Hitler, Osama bin Laden."
Oh man. Oh
It's
man.
like 1% of the males in the world have an INFJ
Yeah.
personality.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
it was.
well, the majority of people in the military are introvert, which is the I, sensing as opposed to intuitive, which was the N,
Uh,
and then thinking, feeling. Most of them are thinking, feeling is, it's like right brain versus left brain. Yeah,
yeah,
because I'm a borderline I and an E, and I'm very, very strong N and an F. My NF is ridiculously strong. In fact, the lieutenant colonel, when I was at the Defense Systems Management College, pulled me aside, and his first question was, Sergeant Raphael, what are you doing in the military? And I'm like, what do you mean? What am I doing in the military?
yeah,
He said, well, you probably look at the big picture. And he started saying these things. I started thinking, oh my God, this guy is psychic. How does he know this about me? He told me to turn around and tell me what color his shirt was. I said, I don't know, light blue, maybe. I turned around, his shirt was yellow, but it was just a business shirt. So, it was like the attention to detail was not quite there, but you can pick up the feelings of others or whatnot.
yeah, yeah.
But that's so tell me more about that. What about your kids?
Oh, yeah. You know what? Honestly, I've got one that's an INFP, but even though we share three of the same
Mhm.
letters, we look at the world completely different.
It's
you know?
interesting.
So
Well, the judgment and the perception stuff, because I felt like a fish out of water.
yeah,
I read up on this. I read this book called please understand me. And so it helped me deal with the fact that, because I did feel kind of alone in my own personality and in my need for creativity and whatnot. So I have a feeling those are elements of what attracts what we ended up seeing over in England or experiencing. I think it's what makes us open to the universe.
Yeah, yeah.
I really do. I mean, I think it's the intuition, listening to your gut, um,
Hey,
versus.
I'll tell you, if I didn't listen to my gut feeling, I don't think I'd be here some days,
Yeah, yeah.
Just with some of the stuff I've gone through and just being able to read people. That's one of the traits we have. Everybody thinks we're psychic. We're not. We dwell on so many details
Mhm.
subconsciously that we pick up on stuff. So we read people real well and that sort of thing. So I always can kind of be a step ahead of people, and I can really guess what somebody's next
Yeah.
move will be, which is bad because when I was a kid, I didn't really realize that wasn't normal, and I was able to manipulate people a lot. Yeah, it was pretty easy. I got to a point where I just went, wow, I need to stop doing this. This is pretty bad. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm talking when I was 10, 11 years old, I could manipulate all the adults around me. It was easy.
Fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you've got the IQ behind it too. Not only your personality preferences and
Yeah, I'm a freak of
have you
nature.
taken that test, Larry?
No, I haven't.
Yeah.
I'd be afraid what came out.
I would guess, and this is just my guess for
Steve's
you.
laughing.
You definitely
Crazy, yes.
extrovert. Would you say?
Lunatic.
I would
I'm
say
not an extrovert. Believe it or not, I'm not an extrovert. And I know some people would fall over with. Absolutely not. I'm if I'm comfortable with people. My mistakes were always throwing myself in first into certain company in life, not just service, and getting burned for it. And then, so as years I started to own that. Okay, go with your guts on this. But no, I haven't been tested. Troubled child, probably. I don't know. I'm not stupid. I wrote book.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, and
I don't know how much beyond that I am.
Yeah, and I'm sure, with your intuition and feeling, there's a mix in there with creativity, and you are highly creative. So that fits into that too.
That
Yeah,
came
and
later.
actually, excuse me, I was going to say I'm going to continue with my writing here. I've got like a 4-part book series I'm working on right now, which
Really?
is
Awesome.
yeah. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a lot of the war stories I've heard over the years from friends and colleagues and different people I've worked with and whatnot, and I'm going to make a main character, and he's just going to use those war stories and navigate through some of the hot spots in the world. And
Wow.
That's good,
so,
man. You'll probably do
Yeah,
real well with
yeah.
yeah, and I've got a friend of mine who's writing a book series, and his main character is a war correspondent. So his war correspondent's going to meet my character in his book every now and then, and my character is going to meet a war correspondent, his character every now and then. So we're going to cross over a little bit.
Wow.
So,
You know,
yeah.
that
That's
has more
ingenious.
legs than UFO stuff, I can tell you. They're a huge
Yeah.
market. I could be coming to you to live in your guest tent someday. I'll tell you. Go
I'll
for
tell
it,
you,
brother.
I haven't made enough money off selling my book to buy a set of tires for my motorcycle.
Me neither.
Well,
Seriously.
another thing too is that you could probably include things like meeting up with these people also through dreams and that kind of thing. There could be other,
Yeah.
other realms, not just physically.
I wanted Lori with Steve. The last show we did together, and I did ramble because it was great to talk to Steve again. It's been so long, and I can do that. Steve knows I don't, but I made a mistake on that show, and that was the Lee Swain thing, which was fascinating. That blew me away because Steve his dad had been contacted. My mother got a phone call for him when I wasn't living with her at that time.
Yeah.
And when I said he was stationed at Mooring in Maine, well, I went through some old. I'm a saver. over since that show, and I found a note from my mother. She took it out of her notepad, and she goes, "This is the guy." But he was at Pease Air Force Base in New Hampshire, not at
Okay.
Loring. He was at Lee Swain was at Pease Air Force Base, Steve, not Loring.
Yeah.
I found my mother's note. I have everything, so I made an error on that. It was Pease.
Did he know? Did Lee Swain know your dad, or did he get to meet your dad?
No, he didn't know who my father was. He had no idea. He just knew that he was a first shirt for the I think at the time it was the 73rd Air Medevac out of I think they were out of McGuire at that time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but he worked with somebody after that up in Pease, because my dad actually retired, and then they started up a new Air Medevac unit up in Pease, and they brought him out of retirement, and it took like an act of Congress to unretire him and make him active again. So I know it was a big deal to get him reactivated after he retired, but they just wanted him in there for a couple of years to get this squadron going, and then he just re-retired.
Yeah. Well,
I made an error on that. That makes sense. But Steve, I have from our squadron, and I won't put it on here, but I have a sheet and it has your SSAN number, it has mine, it has Mark Thompson's, it has all kind of people's, and it was us going from one training status to another. And on Bentwaters, and I have that, brother. I'd love to get you a copy of that, and a lot of names, even Henderson's and Cullip are on it, man.
Yeah,
I have it, but it has social security numbers. I don't even give that to researchers. Never gave it to Peter. No one.
I need to jump in here. You reminded me of some Cullip. He was, God love him, man. He was a character. Okay. He was a boxer from Philly. He was a union. He was in the Teamsters Union and the whole bit. I don't know why he was in the service, but
jail.
He got in trouble one time. They came in and raided his dorm because he had written down a whole, I don't know what you would call it, a dossier on anti-gravity and using the magnetic forces of the Earth for propulsion and this and that. And he wrote like some 3-4 page document of what he felt. I mean, I didn't think Cullip was the smartest tool in the shed, So he wrote this thing down, and I guess security came in, OSI or somebody, and they grilled him hard about, where'd you come up with this? What, blah, blah, blah. And he's just like, I don't know. I was just thinking, maybe, with gravity and the way things work. And they're like, no. They didn't believe it came out of him, But
was that after the events and all that of our time?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting, because I remember them scouring around looking for someone that was hiding pictures for somebody, and that must have been the Cullip thing also, where they're on everything. Wow.
Yeah.
That rings a bell.
He told me they gave him a hard time about that. They took his material and never gave it back to him. I know he'd mentioned
that's
that.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I wonder whatever happened to Mark Thompson.
That's similar to what, with Jim Peniston with the binary code, and Stacy Smith when he was sharing with us about that church, St. Michael's, that's on, he had some grid coordinates that he didn't know anything about, and he knew about different things like propulsion, and it was almost as if he's like, I don't know how I know this stuff. I'm not an engineer. When we were talking to him. And I really believe that a lot of these folks did have those types of effects, different. I think we've all had different.
Oh yeah.
From it, like
different roles to play, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's just somehow, some way we all get touched a different way and opens up a little different spot in our brain to enlighten us here and there. I mean, I don't know. I'm just talking, but. Seems like everybody's had a little bit different effect and a little bit different. Paula had mentioned that a lot of people that have had contacts, their memories are like way better than before they had contact. So I don't know. That might be a thing too. But maybe, I don't know if it's from being traumatized though. I mean, because that can really keep your memory pretty acute with PTSD, but
I just know that when I first got to the base, my sensitivity was really heightened.
Yeah.
I mean, going through, and go, my sponsor was Jackie Frazier and her husband, John Frazier, who was a mechanic. He loved to work with different things. He was always tooling around in a little, like a little MG. Uh, and when he took me out and about the first couple of days I got there on the weekend, he showed me around. We were driving bat out of hell on the winding little roads all over the place. And I was having a blast. I just didn't want it to stop because I knew that once I got to the base, it would stop. And, and this, I'd only been there for a day or two. And it was just something about being on that base. I just felt this heavy, heavy weight on me. And
Yeah.
and it was
Yeah.
as if time started to move slowly too. I mean, it was just,
You know,
and then, and yeah.
oh,
And then
I'm
I
sorry to
was gonna,
interrupt.
then I was gonna say, then I started training like a day later or whatever, and then I'm dealing with these sergeants that were just really sarcastic to me, walking in, and they're like, "What do you want?" Well, I was told to report to training. Oh, well, you got to sit there because your supervisor, whoever's doing your training, is not here. It was just weird. It was just really, really, it was,
Talk
sloppy.
among you. I'm just gonna pop for a minute. You're
Oh yeah,
fine.
oh yeah. Once
Sure.
I was reading recently this review by by it was the Nick Pope book, The Encounters, Rendlesham Encounter or whatever, and he
Uh,
was just saying, and I thought this was the one who reviewed the book said, and then take the case of Major Malcolm Ziegler, the intimidator, who was key to getting rid of Major Drury, which I didn't know about, and who was orchestrated the rough interrogations of several of the airmen. He needs to be taken to the woodshed for his role in this whole affair. Did anyone go public on how the major screwed other airmen? And then they talked about. He said, "Yes, see page 475 in John Hanson's Haunted Skies book." Um, See, I think he's gotten away lightly on this whole thing. I mean, um, yeah, I think a lot of the airmen were left to hang out to dry.
yeah. 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 I think I mentioned one time in a podcast or a speech that he might not have been part of it, but he didn't back us up. He didn't
No,
do anything for us.
no.
And I've heard everything from him being a doofus and he had to get out of the service because he was never going to make the next rank to he was a CIA operative to I mean I've heard so much stuff. I don't know what to think about the guy, but
Yeah, yeah.
I wasn't impressed by him at all.
No, no, no. No, I wasn't either. But for me, it was mainly I could tell he wouldn't even look at me. When he'd drive through my gate, it was like he would look like straight ahead, like reminded me of the Wicked Witch of the East. Do, 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 do. And he drove this really, really, really funky white, I don't know, Barracuda, I think he drove. He drove the,
Let me guess. You're talking about Mal Ziegler.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I was out of the room.
I had mentioned about in that review I was sharing with you about the Rendlesham Encounter, the Nick Pope book.
Yes.
This
Yes.
guy went as far as saying, and then take the case of Major Malcolm Ziegler, the intimidator, who was key to getting rid of Major Drury, which I didn't know he did. Not a chance. And then wait, was key to getting rid of Major Drury and who orchestrated the rough interrogations of several of the airmen. Uh,
That's not true.
he needs to be taken to the woodshed for his role in the whole affair. See, um, yeah, he did screw a lot of airmen. He really did.
Yeah.
There was a she would have been a she would have been a senior airman then. Jerry Malcolm. She was actually a green rope while I was down in tech school, but she wasn't in my flight. Uh, and she got to Bentwater, so it was like, oh, what a small world! Look, you're here, and I knew you in San Antonio. and she said things about him, about he really should have gone to jail for creating that where all those airmen went snap. I mean, they had a whole dormitory of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I was snapped after my little incident.
Were you really?
Oh
Yes.
yeah. Oh, you wouldn't believe the stuff they had me doing, man. Is like, everybody'd go out and get drunk and puke their brains out on a Saturday night, and I was the guy that had to go in there and clean the toilets and scrub the floors. And, oh yeah,
Oh
yeah,
man. Oh,
yeah.
Remember
You
the
wouldn't
little
believe
black,
some of
the
did they
little
put
they
black
they
knit
they had
hat?
they had me take a toothbrush and clean all the cracks in the tiles in the shower one time with acetone. Yeah,
Remember?
Did
yeah.
they,
Oh,
yeah, did they have you uh pull a Chuck Connors and in the old Western branded? Did they take your beret away and make you wear a baseball hat?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
just despise that whole thing.
there was a black knit cap like Jack Nicholson wore in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It
Oh,
wasn't a
okay.
baseball. It was in our day. It was a knit cap, right, Steve? And I
No,
always say,
I just had my green cap is all they
Yeah,
made me wear.
"Oh,
yeah,
really? They ran
Yeah.
out of the black."
yeah. And you weren't allowed to wear. They weren't allowed to wear their pants bloused.
Oh
So
no,
Right,
it's
right.
kind of like we're going to take it all away from you. And
they
I mean,
do
the
it.
whole
Yeah,
thing was downright. It was humiliating. It didn't have to be. I
Yeah.
just and it was a lot of guys that I think the ones that went snap were really the ones that were probably the smartest guys. I mean, I knew
no,
several of them. I'm like, damn, why are you going? Because he said to me, I just don't want to. I just don't want to take the bullshit anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just tired of it. It's yeah. I mean, I had seen that. I didn't really see. I mean, we would have the drug tests, and I didn't really see that many get thrown out for drugs. But I did see some of them do some crazy stuff, like stealing an M16 and dismantling it, trying to mail
we
it
heard
over
about
to the
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we
to the
Yeah.
heard that one.
U.S.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a guy. He was from the army. He switched over to the Air Force, and God, I can't remember his name offhand, but he ended up throwing the rest of the M16 in the North Sea, and
Huh.
and I guess you had to go find it. Yeah, it was just
Oh,
a lot
Jesus.
of
Hmm.
yeah, just a lot of crazy stuff like that. People shooting their weapons off at Eastgate. We had quite a few of that. I mean, there were
Yeah.
like one or two
They
times.
mentioned that in Guard Mount one time. They were like, "Hey, stop shooting your guns and replacing the bullets with pencils at the bottom of the magazine." I was like, "What? Who does that?"
I
They
heard
would
that.
take pieces of pencil and stick it in
Yeah,
it on the bottom, and then put all the other rounds on top to make it look like they had 30 rounds.
yeah. I think one of the things that happened, I was working with this guy Getson, and he was so cool. He was just so laid back. He was constantly kicking the rabbits to get them away from the gate shack. He said, "Oh, damn rabbits!" But he and I were. It was like 6. It was early in the morning, and we were over by the what they called the headquarters. Where they and we our job was to put the flags up. We had to put the American flag up and the British flag up. And I said something on the radio, and the Sergeant Kuhn, who was a desk sergeant, made fun of what I said because at the time I had a strong New York accent, and I got on the radio and I said, "Oh, shut up." He was like, "Oh no," and he was like, "Get back to this unit ASAP when you're done." So I was like rushing, "Hurry up, hurry up, gotta get these flags up, gotta get them up, blah, blah." And I got mine up really fast. I had to get the British flag up. So I went to the chow hall that evening, and I thought, well, I have a story to share. And I was telling people, yeah, I told the desk sergeant to shut up. Isn't that cool? And they're like, well, yeah, I guess, but I'll tell you, yeah, everyone went crazy during day shift because the British flag was flying upside down.
Oh, they'll get
It's like,
over it.
oh
Oops.
no. I knew I was going to hear it. I was like, oh my God. at that point I felt sick. I was like, oh,
We're in a national mourning over here because Elizabeth passed away,
yeah,
as you probably know, yesterday.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I saw that.
yeah, so it's like it's not like it's more than a president, man. It's everything's shut down for like 10 days and no soccer. God, how will they get by? And it's something. I'll tell you, it's historic, really, isn't it?
Oh,
But
yeah.
and I've seen such filth on the internet written about this. A 96-year-old woman, the
yeah,
real conspiracy far outers, and the lizards and all this. I can't do it.
yeah,
I've gotten rid of 5 or 6 people I never knew today, but I don't want to know them. I'm waiting.
right.
It reminds me of the community too much.
Hmm.
So God bless the Queen. God bless the King. That's what I say. Good on them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
I'm
shame.
not. I'm not too keen on that word of being. I guess his wife
Sub
is called the queen uh,
consort.
consort.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know what it means either. Don't sound good.
No, no, no. It sounds like the girlfriend who just kind of
Yeah,
hung out.
concubine. That's what
The
you're
I
thinking.
was just gonna say concubine comes to mind, but
Yeah, yeah,
You lived in
consort.
China, Steve. You know
I
what
don't
that
want to be a
means.
consort.
I didn't have any concubines. Nope.
No, I you
There
lived
you
in
go.
China. That's all I say. I
Yeah.
don't mess with mercenaries, man. They get around. They know people. One phone call, Joe. That's it. But
Well,
you lived in Shanghai, didn't you, for a long time? That's fascinating.
oh
Mhm.
yeah, I lived in Shanghai. Yeah, I lived in Suzhou for 2 or 3 years, and I moved over to Shanghai for I don't know, I guess about 6 years. Yeah. So,
Amazing.
Yeah,
Never
yeah,
been.
I
30
had
million 30 million people in one town. That's a lot of people.
That's
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Shanghai.
wow.
I've been to Chengdu and to Guangzhou.
Oh, Guangzhou.
Ah,
Yeah.
Yeah, I went there, which used to be Peking, I think. Yeah, I was there when I was adopting my daughter. And one thing I was going to share with you too is I've been talking to Dale Combs, and I mentioned to him that he's in your book, Left at Escape. And he said, "Really? Where am I in the book?" And
is he in
at the
my
time,
book?
yeah.
Is
And
he? Oh,
yeah, well, he was there, I think, when Bonnie Tamplin was going into the
well,
room with,
actually,
I guess, Major Drury.
actually, yeah, that's me writing about me. I was working in operations, and
Yeah,
I think I was there. I didn't know what it was about. Now I do, but
yeah,
with Lieutenant Champlin, first the gold bar is first
yeah. He
lieutenant,
was second lieutenant. Yeah.
second lieutenant. That's right. It's
Mhm.
been a long time, and
Yeah.
I happen to be doing this file cabinet thing for Drury, Carl,
Hmm.
and he was a whippersnapper too. But the reality is, I was in that. There were some other people, but she came in, and the argument spilled through the door. And
Hmm.
I'm like, oh, these are officers having words here, and I'm like kneeling down. I didn't know what I was doing, but put that in there. And I didn't write about him, but I wasn't alone with them. But in that part of there was a small office anyway, SP Ops, and I wanted to get back over to security police supply because it was just me and this crazy guy, Dean Thompson, who fell off a motorcycle and he just rammed the whole thing. And you got everything out of there. But it was me. That's in the book. I was there. That's written. That's about me. I didn't know Combs. I remember, maybe remember him, but I don't think
He
his
was
name.
actually, I think he was in charge of investigations, is what he was doing at that time.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. And he had blonde hair, kind of really, he was kind of stocky guy, really
Oh, I remember
handsome.
him. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And he said that after hearing a lot of the talk, he did go out to the site, but he really didn't see anything. And I'm like, yeah, obviously, you're gonna see a bunch of trees and the grass and whatnot.
People don't remember is after the December thing is that, and I saw the aircraft, and it wasn't on Bentwaters, it was on the end of Woodbridge. They taxied it out there, big old unmarked kind of jet, and it had all its own security teams.
Mhm.
And Holtz talked about that. I saw it and didn't know what it was. It could have been anything, but it was all related within of the core Rendlesham Forest incident, and a week later, Steve's and all that. But it's all part of it, really.
Mhm.
And that, and they had people out there, all kind of major operation went on. We dealt with the intel people, Steve and I. He was in the aftermath of it. We were caught up in that end of it, and it was bigger than people can even comprehend, this thing. And yet there's so many that were there don't even know it happened at all. And that's how it was clamped down. There was no barroom rumors and all the stuff debunkers try to say. It's nonsense. I didn't first talk about it. I think Steve was first, and then it was Adrian Bustinza, because I was with him. And like I wrote in the book, and that was in March. So Steve and I talked about it probably, he'll might know better, in January, February. And then,
Yeah,
so Steve
I was off the base in April, so it was definitely before that. And my incident was 3 work cycles after yours.
That's right.
So it was like 3 days off, 3 days mid, 3 days swing or whatever. So it was 3 of those cycles, and then on one of those shifts at the end is when I had my sighting. So about 27 days or 26 days later. So
so in January, and but it's all connected. I think you and Lori also, with the things that happened to you, and I was saying to her before, and just my opinion, I probably said it to you over the years, because I know that I've grown up with this phenomenon, whatever it is, since I was a child, unfortunately, and in a non-UFO family, of course, like yourself. And I definitely, gut feeling is more happened to you, Steve, on that night than you recall, and that's how these things operate. And Lori, yourself too. Otherwise, you just would move on, because a lot of people see things and just get on with it. You know, have it ride with you and you ponder it. And I've seen the pattern with authentic. I hate the word abductee, or people that have had. I hate contactee. The English use that. It's like, hey, how you doing? It's nothing like that, and it's so bizarre and so weird, and it just, to stay with you, is just so atypical of authentic people that have had very close. Not necessarily that you remember it, or nor do you really want to most of the time, you know?
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Well, I'll tell you that, Lori, you had mentioned earlier about my acute memory, and that's what bugs me probably the most out of this whole thing, is the craft was coming up the road, and then it was over my head. And then after it was over my head, it was to the right, but I don't remember going from over my head to the right and starting to ascend into the clouds. And man, I got some gap there, you know, and that's not typical at all with me. I remember, I mean, I can tell you what my wife was wearing the first time we met. You know,
my time lost for me, in a way, it took me a long time to realize it. I was explaining that it was at 3 o'clock in the morning when it happened, okay, and it really lasted about 10 minutes or so, at least in my mind. I mean, looking back, it wasn't that long, didn't drag on. By the time I got to when the desk sergeant told me to go to the air tower at Woodbridge, it was already daybreak, and it was so subtle. That was the thing that really bugged the hell out of me. I mean, it was like I didn't feel like I was ever out of my body or ever somewhere else, but there was about 2, maybe 3, almost 3 hours that we lost.
Well, there's something there then.
Yeah.
I hate to say you don't push that, but
Yeah, I've talked to a few people about doing the regression, but I'm still,
It depends who you do it with. The Bud is gone. Bud Hopkins was a great. John Mack he had his own thing, but he was he was the head of psychiatric medicine at Harvard. Oh, really? But I don't know who's, because if it's the UFO coffee clutch, the showbiz folk, I wouldn't trust opening my head up to them.
No.
I was lucky I'm from the era where I could explore some things. And, but I've had things since I was a child, and that's.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. And
what about you, Steve? As a child, did you have any kind of really weird events or something that you couldn't explain, or you didn't want to explain?
Yeah, I did have a couple times where my dad being in the Air Force, he was in the reserves, and some of his friends stayed on the base there down in New Jersey at McGuire. So they had on-base housing. And I remember one day when we were at one of his friends' house, there was a kid that was about my age. We were chumming around, and we went back behind the house, and there was some railroad tracks. And I remember stopping dead in my track, just going, I can't go there. If I go over there, something's going to hurt me really bad. There's something waiting in those bushes. Man, I mean, I don't know what it was, but I turned around and said, come on, we got to go somewhere else. We can't go there.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I don't know what it was, but there was like a wall. I just stopped like, whoop, whoa, my gosh. Yeah,
Wow.
it hit me hard. And I just went, I mean, I've got goosebumps just thinking about that day. Yeah, I still remember it very vividly, just going,
Yeah.
we can't go. And we were there like the day before playing, but that day I was just like, nah, something over there. So, but,
Yeah. Again, there is a pattern, there. I was talking with this gentleman who we did a podcast. He was a reverend of a minister, Michael J.S. Carter, and he talked about his experience, and because I shared with him this thing where you have these flashes in your mind, and it could be like a little snippet of a video, you could say, of what's out there. It's like I'm going to put a picture out there so you know what you're dealing with. So apparently there is a lot of that goes on too, that in some cases, if you're walking someplace, you may get a visual in your mind. And I think that's something that happened to you, Larry, with the person behind that screen, even if it was a dream or if it was real, but that person who knew about you.
I think that was plugged in, but that I don't know. I don't want to know that part. And I never explored that. I could have done a lot of that, but I did some of the incident.
Yeah.
A lot of names came up that I didn't recall. That Halt wanted that tape, and that's the one certain people were talking about from Bud. Provide him. Halt wanted that tape, and the code of practice, if there is one in the subject, they do try to follow a medical kind of standard. Bud Hopkins, all them did, and unfortunately, some bad apples, got that tape. I'm not, but Halt wanted those names on there. Yeah.
Wow.
And yeah, it's pretty naughty, and there you go. It wasn't Bud's fault. It was people close to him. Yeah, it's always the way. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Well, I mean, look at the Halt voice recording. Halt didn't release that. It was somebody else that grabbed it and stole it, and right.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
I think they mentioned the Ted Conrad, I guess the base commander at the time. They said he took it to cocktail parties.
Yeah, they say that. You know what happened with that tape, because my information got it out, and I hate jumping in, but it is part of the history. And over here, I'm the one. My information I'm the one that gave that to Western media when I went to Japan. But the thing is, it was being passed around by British research. The same old thing before and people. And only a few people had it, and they were trying to monetize it, just like they did the Halt memo, which because of me, came out, and before that. And so in October '84, I went to Japan. They played it. Steve, you probably heard it when the Japanese, were over filming us, and they played it in my parents' living room. They played the sorry, Japan, and they played the major. Yeah, they played the audio, and I blew my father and stepmother away. I think my brother Scotty was there. And all I thought of is, man, and they go, you come to Japan and, be a dancing fool and all, whatever. And I'm like, oh, can I take my brothers? I could have asked for any amount of money. I got $500, man, and I couldn't take my brother. Oh, what a sucker. I could ask for anything. And I was there for a month. But you know what? I went there to get that tape, and I said, oh, I won't give it to anyone. I got back here. I passed that right to Chuck DeCaro. And CNN, it premiered on CNN in January, February '85, and on the first time in the West. And had I not done it, they were all over here selling it and trying to sell it. And they sold it to the Japanese. And I know the Halt memo went for 25,000 UK pounds in 1983. We sent it to them to assist people that are known, and they sold it to the News of the World rag newspaper, and that was the front cover, UFO lands in Suffolk. And with a partial drawing of me, of the thing I saw, which I never actually finished, but they ran with it, and I never dealt with them. And now when they try to show that famous headline, I have the paper here, they cut my picture out and stick in Jim Peniston's take on what he experienced. And that's how dishonest this whole subject is. And it isn't the witnesses, man. It's just,
hey, can I jump in? You talked about
man,
Chuck Tuccaro. When you talked about Chuck Tuccaro and CNN, when that aired, I was sitting in a Tallahassee motel room with a bunch of mercenaries getting ready to jump off and go to Honduras and go into Nicaragua and fight with the Contras. And that came on, and my commander looked at me, and I just went, I gotta go. And I got up and left the room because he and I had talked, and he's asking, how come you got out of the service early and this and that? And I told him, he goes, oh, okay. Yeah. And I told him I'd done this interview and stuff, and it was going to be on CNN, and it came on, and I just went, I gotta go. I didn't want to look at this. I was just totally embarrassed. They were busting my cubes pretty hard there for a couple of days. It's just like whatever. But
everyone.
A couple weeks later, I was in the jungle.
Yes, everyone on that CNN.
And you couldn't hide.
Huh?
What?
You could not hide. It didn't matter how deep in the jungle it came out. It's funny though, because with me, I guess I wasn't really watching the news over those years. And no, I was, but I guess maybe I wasn't.
Well, it wasn't like
I felt like Where's Waldo? I left there in 1980, and 82, 83, 84, 85. I had no clue. I had no clue about your story. It wasn't until 95, 96 that when I typed in Bentwaters that it came up.
Well, I brought the Bentwaters thing, that December thing out, and it just snowballed. It wasn't like I want to be known with these, the people, like when Steve and I did the thing 40 years ago almost, and we stood. People don't realize that was him and me up there. And he goes, these people are a little loopy, and I'm thinking, what's this all about? But then the document came, and I said, God, where can this go? And I thought every program, I was alone really publicly for 11 years until Unsolved Mysteries, when the rewrite began with Jim and Holt. Well, John, I forget who was on that. And blah, blah, blah. But it's my main thing was to get people to come out. I wrote to the Air Force Times and saying, we're all in this together. They never published it. Badly typed letter. I still have it somewhere. And saying, we're all in this together. Let's get this in it. They never even published it. So I tried 11 years myself.
Yeah, one thing, Steve, that you wrote in your book, and it really is important, is that, people need to understand that the stories that you're hearing at this location, hearing here, is that we're all getting older. You know what I mean? And there's a problem with the fact that, our stories in many ways still need to be heard. And I just feel that as a sense of, it's like a compelling feeling that comes over me, that it still needs to be heard. And, people tend to only listen to what they want to listen to. And so that's why I try and be a nudge. But I was just reading that when you wrote, I have something, I say something anyone wants to counter, then I should do that while they are alive to do so, out of respect for my fellow airmen. You talk about a lot of the folks who are, passing away. It's like, oh yeah, so and so, yeah, he's gone.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure. I mean, besides the the UFO event, and all the other events in my life too, was, hey, if anybody's got anything, if I'm getting something wrong, I want to make sure it's corrected before everybody passes away. I don't want to be the guy that changes history because everybody's dead and they can't speak up for themselves, So
well, that whole concept is so refreshing compared to so many people out there that are trying to make up their own false narrative.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
And
I
the
didn't
thing
want to
is,
be
we're
that
all
guy.
no, you're not.
Yeah.
We're all the young. We're the young end of this thing too. And we're in our 60s.
Yeah. I know everybody else is 70s, 80s. They're all
Hey,
getting ready to pass on.
Gordon Williams is dead. He
Yeah.
died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a
Swain,
great interaction.
Swain's dead. I don't know if Malcolm Ziegler's dead, but I know he had some cancer issues here a few years ago. So I'm
I
not
don't
sure.
know.
Yeah,
Maybe
I'm
we
not
should go
sure.
visit him.
He's
I
in
know, I know,
Florida.
I know his wife is a realtor, or if she was. It,
Well,
They'd have to be retired.
he had a security company called Bentwater. Called
Woodbridge.
Woodbridge Security Company,
Right.
and he got government contracts after he left the service. So everybody's wondering, what he promised, or did he just get out of the way and let everybody do what they had to do, and that was his reward, was they gave him some government contracts later.
Yeah.
I mean, you could conspiracy theory 100 different avenues, but
Yeah. I just think he was the wrong person for that job, being commander over there.
Yeah, that whole
yeah,
Rendlesham thing with all of us. Number one, a lot of these people out there have never been in service. I mean, for the most part, and the ones that have tend to understand the dynamic. But it's very complicated. It's too much for the people that want a nice little boat. And that's what Jim does in his account. I'm not knocking Jim. I leave that to him. But I am the messenger. The messenger came to me. Wait a minute. You're a guy from Illinois. You're no different than me, Lori, Steve. And you had more stripes on my. Come on. And I'm not saying nothing happened to him, but it is a standalone account, what Jim comes up with.
Yeah.
Mine is not. Yours is not. Steve's is not.
Yeah.
And that's fine because things happen when you're alone, but it's how certain people have tailored the narrative, and it just makes sense for people. They go, oh, what a wonderful ending. They are us. Of course they are. Even for a while to me, I go, oh, that's it. Well, what I saw is nothing to do with us at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
No.
I had John Burroughs he and I was out in Arizona, and he and I had talked one time, and we had talked about Jim. And I'm not calling anybody a liar, but I'm just quoting John. He said, I don't know what he's talking about. He went up and touched the craft and this and that. He goes, the last thing I remember was we were laying down on the ground scared to death.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, that
and
whole
then
thing.
I think he had a blackout period after that, or a loss of memory after that. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's what I had heard too through, I think an interview that John Burroughs had done with a woman named Cookie. I have no idea.
No, I went out with her, and she listen. We're all old people now, but it was Belinda Green is her name, and she went by Cookie, and I met her, and she wasn't in police, she was in supply, but she was.
Yeah.
We had berets. Now we had to get foreign service shots, I think, on Laplume. And I see this cute little number working on planting bushes. I don't know what kind of detail they had. She was still in BMTS basic. And where are you from? I'm from New York State, blah, blah, blah. And so I get to Bentwaters, and just like Steve running into you in the hall after knowing you in Texas, bar fights and all, we, not us, by the way, folks. And I see this Belinda girl, I'm like, oh, right. Because there were a lot of us that came over, and she was a driver for supply. But over the years, I've seen the stuff. I wish her well. And we had a nice little week. I write about her in the book. It was this little honey. It cost me a whole month's pay in London.
Okay. That was the first one to London.
Yeah. Well, no, it wasn't well, I'll leave that alone. But she was it was a nice, innocent sort of weekend with another couple, and hey, I'm out of high school X amount of months, and then here we are out in the world, in London. And I knew London a little because I went to school here for a few months. And the thing is, I've seen over the years, she has infiltrated into the narrative. For why anyone would want to, I have no idea. And she was involved in his cast judgment. He told me I never saw her after that weekend when she ripped me off, and never saw her again. And that was the first weekend of December 1980, because we were off weekends because we had the classes on Woodbridge.
Mhm.
And it was the 2 days before John Lennon got shot. We went to London. And that was it. I never even ran into her, ever seen her, nothing. I think at a dorm clearance once. Oh, hi, how you doing? And that was it. And so some people pick their heroes that fall very easy, but they want to be infiltrated, because she couldn't get on with me and say, oh yes, I was driving out to the wood. No, you weren't involved in this at all. The people that always yelled at me, say I was in the Air Force, I wasn't involved, they're the ones that weren't involved in it, but it's how it works.
Yep. Hey, can I ask a question, Larry? That girl that you're talking about, did she, even though she's American, did she speak with a British accent every now and then for fun, or just because she, I don't know.
Yeah, she put it on when she got, even that weekend.
You know what? You
was
and I
worse
were
than
walking.
Madonna.
You and I were walking one time between the barracks, and she came up and said something and had a British accent, and I said, "Oh, is that so? You know, is she like British or something?" And you were like, "No, she just does that sometimes." And you kind of blew it off like, "Let's get out of here. I don't want nothing to do with her."
Wow.
I wanted my paycheck. That's women for you. Oh, I don't falter. We were kids, but it does. She had, she's a grandma probably now, and it's exciting for folks. And she was at the base, but she had no role in these events. And a lot of people look for allies, and sometimes it's just not worth it. Because
I guess in the book, the weaponization book with John Burroughs' book with James Worrell.
I've never read it. Never read it. No.
She said from her perspective, where she was located, she could kind of see Burroughs, and I guess Adrian was not that far from Burroughs, and they both saw Burroughs kind of fade out, disappear. And
well, if Cookie said she wasn't far away, that means she was in the forest as a supply driver, watching what happened after we had left the site on Cable Green. It's impossible. There were no women involved on my night. There were no women out there. Bonnie Tamplin was the night before, which I didn't know. There was not a female LE. There was nothing out there that was female, especially Cookie at all. So I wouldn't
I'll have to find that one to figure out where.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not true. Adrian, I saw John Burroughs out there because he was tall. I mean, he was like 6'6", and he's in civvy clothes. I remember Holt asked me in '93, what was he wearing? And I was wearing a winter. It was civilian clothes, and next to Chris Arnold's cop car. And Chris Arnold come to LE. Remember him? He was the guitar player, Steve, on our floor. Yeah. And he's come out real nasty about Rendlesham. Never about me. I don't know what, but has always attacked it. But Chris was parked in the parking area in the forest. He never was out in the fields. But that was the only LE car there. And Burroughs was waiting there. And that's when they said, tell Burroughs to stay at the location. The Stins is with me, Paul, and everyone else. Then they call us off. They peeled us away. And the funny thing is, like John and I agreed, I always remember just walking away, looking back twice maybe. And then all of a sudden I'm in the SP, Central Security Control, going through, weapon out, whole thing. And I'm like, what the, and I glazed over that in my book because it just didn't add up. Where's the sun up? They're just breaking the sun. It doesn't make sense of the time. But John said he was missing on that night because he had further activity with Adrian, which I believe 100%. I wasn't there for that, but everything happened on that Cape of Green. And Holt, when he says he went to the backfield and back through, there is no way he missed everything that I describe, and there is. But yeah.
Well, what's interesting about what you're saying there, you're actually sharing something that I didn't connect, is that John Burroughs was in civilian clothes. This was not the first night when he and Jim were out there in the field.
That was the third night.
He went out on his day off because he was on Charlie flight. So he went out on his day off to spend time in the woods in the middle.
Well, I was C, but they took him, but he was LE. I was SP, and they pulled him off duty like they did with me because I called my mother. So John and I talked about that, you know, if he could just be John, he's a great guy. But he had, I remember him telling me he had this overwhelming feeling these things were coming back. And he hitched a ride out to the forest where all the activity was going on. And later, after they wouldn't let him forward, halts enough hundreds of yards away from us, where you hear the audio, small party. We're a lot more people out there, and the cameras, everything. That ice, there they are. They were there, and this phenomenon, what it did. And he literally said he was compelled to come back. He was not on duty. He was not in uniform. I remember, but it was dark, but you couldn't miss him. And him and Bastinza, he got forward. I was gone. Must have been the thing we happened to us. And him and Bastinza ran after this phenomena on Capel Green. And Adrian fell, and John went into it. And he said the inside was massive outside. And of course, I don't speak for other people, but it was fascinating to actually talk to him. Now, I've spoken to Jim about 10 years ago personally. And I said, which hand did you touch the thing with? Now I'm thinking, remember our training in SP was cover. You see something you can't identify near a NATO base, cover, conceal, and relay. And remember, is that accurate, Steve? I've been out for a while.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay, so, but Jim didn't cover, conceal, or anything. He just walks up and touched a thing that could have been 1,000,000,000 degrees. Who knows what this thing is? I saw anything sitting above the ground, I'm going the other way and calling for backup. But c'est la vie. And they never mentioned Eddie Cabanasac, who flew over in our rotation. We trained with us. He's been written right out of their night. That's the first night. So they jumbled up these three. They're trying to say 4 now. I think it's only 3 nights. I thought it was all one night. How could these things keep going on? Even when the Halt memo came out, I go, oh, because that is written as if it's all in one night, really. But it isn't. It's a number of consecutive nights of different things, and probably things none of us will ever know. And then you follow it. Lori, you predated it, and it's the same phenomena. It's the same intelligence. And and it's left us all in a big giant train wreck of, not us, but I mean, of hatred. And, you know, I don't have that no more, but it doesn't let you live long enough. But man,
I think
very complicated.
I think that hatred and the static that you're talking about is part of the, like a cloak, part of, you know, trying to maintain interference from learning more.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think it's part of the, because everybody likes to fight as opposed to, you know, put the pieces together.
You know, Lori, I always believed, real quick, is the government, you know, the people that debriefed us, and they weren't Air Force, I'm telling you, it wasn't AFOSI, none of that BS. Not for me, they weren't. And they know, and they probably knew in 1980, let them go out into the world and let them do the yada yada. Let them talk about it. Back then, you'd be tarred feathered, run out of a community just saying you saw a UFO. I can vouch, and it wasn't wise. Nowadays, who hasn't, right? But back then, and I think they know you're gonna meet. Where do you go? You go to the papers won't tell. You go to the UFO community, the community. I don't know what they called it then. The MUFONs, the this, the that's, all the big old names. And you're contained. You're in your box. You're safe. You're just in your little coffee clutch. You're the performing, dancing monkey they can bring up on stage, and you do your act, and off you go. Bring on the next idiot, and then we'll write books about these suckers. And you learn it quick. I learned it. It was no different back then. It's just more prevalent with these witchcraft devices. Blah, blah, blah. God, I'm so full of fire. I'm very bad for that business, and I intend to remain so as long as I breathe. As long as I breathe, I mean it. It's too complicated for them, this thing, that bunch. It doesn't belong with them. It doesn't. Anyway, shut up.
Yeah, well, I think that, you know, with so you both met up after you got out, and I mean,
Many number of times. Yeah.
yeah, Did,
I kind of remember a couple times we met up.
yeah. I just kind of
Oh,
There
wonder.
might have been alcohol involved.
Yeah,
Rhode Island.
I just wonder if there were like looking at your time there that you know, did you really feel like you were really in control for yourself leaving, or do you feel like there was something else out there that was really kind of compelling you to to get out?
Who?
To get out of the service?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, mine was just pure fear and fear for my well-being. I
Wow.
mean, after Larry's telling me what's going on and people getting abducted and this and that and everything, and yeah, I just wanted to beat feet and get out of there.
See,
If I'd have had a passport or a boat,
yeah, yeah. See,
I
Larry,
wouldn't have gone through the
what
legal
Larry should have
channels.
said, Steve, don't worry about it. Look, you've been abducted, okay? Don't worry, it's in your DNA. So,
Well, I didn't say I don't know that. I just suspect with you
Yeah,
got both that
no,
there
I
was
know,
far
no, I know.
more to. It just
yeah.
makes sense to me. It doesn't mean
It
I'm
makes
right. I'm not.
no, it makes sense to me.
You know,
Well,
there's
I
more.
actually went to a shrink one time. I was having some anger management issues when I was first getting married and trying to be a human again, just trying to be normal and act like a regular
Right.
person. And I went to this counselor, and actually, the counselor was recommended to me by one of your old friends, Larry. We'll just leave it at, you know who I'm talking about. And because I wanted to
Kids
talk to
lie to
somebody that,
you.
yeah, you had a name for him last time around the show. I forgot what it
Paul
was.
Simon.
Paul Simon. There you go. So, but I wanted to talk to somebody that was at least UFO friendly, and so I could talk openly and not be ridiculed. And I was
Yeah.
like, well, a lot of guys are getting put under hypnosis and this and that. And he's like, well, he goes, honestly, I'm amazed because, I told him about my mercenary background and the whole bit and everything. He goes, I'm amazed you're able to function in society, number one. He said, number two, you got a wife and
Yeah.
kids and a family and stuff. He goes, that's, to me, you're doing good. That's amazing. You haven't fallen off the wagon and gotten into drugs or this, that. He said, but he said, do you really want to go and do hypnosis? I can do it. He said, but do you want to open up that can of worms? He said,
Well said.
maybe
That's
you want to
true.
just go through life and just enjoy it. I went, you know what? I think I'll take that advice. And I never really pursued it. I tried to go
Well,
under one time with Linda Moulton Howe, and she had a friend that, I don't know, somebody anyways. And I don't know. I couldn't relax enough. It was just too heebie-jeebie for me. So
Yeah.
Linda's a journalist, for God's sake. She's not a hypnotherapist.
no. It was
No, she
somebody
needs
she
someone.
Her
recommended,
friend.
not her. Yeah, it was
Oh, I
somebody
know
she
her friend.
recommended.
Yeah.
God, they wear many hats in that game.
Yeah.
With me, I just felt cornered more. I never got snapped. I got used for good duties, details. I got made to move a wheelbarrow one day by Fred Smith, and I'm like, and that's where that Mark Reese, who was AFOSI, put into supply to watch me. Came from, well, long story.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, he actually was married to Jerry Malcolm, who was a green rope while I was in basic training.
Really?
Yeah, who was, yeah, I mean, her story, everything's so interconnected. And
Too.
and her story is, yeah, she got to, when she got to Bentwater, she was just so, what we called ate up. And
All ate up.
it's like, we started calling her Dorothy after Dorothy Hamill, because she was like the biggest skate. We were relentless, but it was hard to, when someone was working so hard to brown nose, and granted, she ended up getting her degree and becoming she retired, I think, as a lieutenant colonel, but
Oh, wow.
she almost cried when she went to officer training school and they put her in security police. She's like, she wanted to be so far away from security police, but
Wow.
but yeah, but she told me later on down the road is that she had, they married and they divorced. And
Yeah.
I think they had 2 kids together, I think. And she said that she came from a really, really poor family. And her biggest fear was not having a roof over her head and, food and that kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
so when she said it, like, I get it. But she actually went with me to Ireland to visit my grandma.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah, that was fun. So we took some photos, and all my photos are so depressing because Ireland can be so freaking depressing, at least back in 1980 or 79. And I said, take a picture of me at the pub drinking because that's the same entertainment we had at Bentwaters. And
Yeah.
but
It
yeah, it was
was.
just gray and green. That was it. Those were the
That
two
was it.
colors. But that was on the southern part of Ireland. It's near County Clare.
I'm across, just across from Northern Ireland here on the Irish
Yeah.
Sea. It's right, the Irish Sea is right here, about a half mile away from me. And Belfast and all that's closest to me up
Wow.
north. Yeah.
Yeah, the closest I ever got there was to a place called Knock, Ireland. It's where
Yeah.
they do these uh, all these Catholic people get together on buses and then they spend a night vigil going in circles saying the rosary, the Our Father and all that. And they start to sound like bees.
Oh my.
And I'm there, I'm thinking, oh my God, I got like another 6 more hours of this. And now I'm outside looking for the all the all the buses, trying to find an open bus so I could just lay down and sleep. And yeah, and then
Wow.
once it was over, they my grandma was getting on the bus and it was full. And I asked some of these young people if they wouldn't mind giving the seat to my grandma. And they said no. And I said, all those rosaries you did, it just went out the window. If you
Yes.
expected to get a badge or something from God and Jesus, yeah, you know.
Can
So
I ask you both? Can I ask you both a question? When you concurrently, when you got to Bentwaters, what room? Because I remember my first day, I heard a lot of rumors, paranormally weirdy thing, not about UFOs, but that was to
Mhm.
come. But what weird things did they lay on you when you got to the base for both of you?
well, for me, it said, you are in the most haunted county in the world, Suffolk County. And then I kept saying, well, that's interesting because I grew up in Suffolk County in New York. And then the second thing was East End Charlie. Those were the two that I was
Yeah.
about. East End
I
Charlie,
I
walking the
remember
right
East
way.
End Charlie, and I remember them saying if you go down the road and there's a girl on a bike, she'll turn around and look at you and she won't have a face.
I
I remember,
remember that.
you
Yeah.
remember that one?
Well,
Yeah.
I actually talked to somebody who was driving a metro van, and he looked in the mirror, and all the people, all the SPs in the back couldn't see. There were no windows for them to see, and he's looking, and he's going bat out of hell because he sees this girl on a bike, and all of a
Oh,
sudden he realized she doesn't have a face, and then he
oh,
starts
not her.
driving. Then he starts driving really, really. I mean, now he's driving like 50, 60 miles an hour on that little road toward yeah, Butley,
Yep.
and he looks out thinking he left her in the dust or whatever, or left her way back, and she was right there beside,
That
50,
was
60
bad.
miles an hour. So she knew how to really, she was ready for the to be on the French circuit or whatever where they ride the
There was,
bikes.
there was so much, and also the
That would
druids.
have creeped me out. I
Oh,
Oh,
honestly.
the
I would have.
druids. If you
Remember
see people out in the forest on the other
That's
side of
it.
the wire around fires, don't worry about it. It's just the druids having a
Yeah, yeah,
ceremony.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I heard that. Although,
And you guys remember Commie Corner on the flight line of Bentwaters? It was that
Yeah.
where it curved, the fence changed, and there was that old church out in the distance, and they'd have all the photographers like
yeah,
airplane geeks,
mhm,
but
Yep.
we called it Commie Corner. Do you
yeah,
remember
yeah. I
that?
remember that. I
They're
remember
giving
that.
all the tail numbers to the Communist Party in London, and then
Oh,
Russia will
nice.
have them this afternoon. That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. I did also talk to this guy George Conway, who he was on a Bravo flight, but I think he switched over to day shift or something. But he told me that at that time, the day after, he actually was the one that drove, I think, Gordon Williams out to the plane to drop
Oh,
off, to
wow.
give him the canister. And
Wow.
he was like, yeah, he was like, I had no idea what it was. It was just so weird. I mean, why, George is really cool. He's a good guy. And he said, and I looked in my rear view mirror and I saw the colonel looking at me, and the colonel kind of scolded him and said, don't look at me. Don't look. And he said, what's going on? But it was put on a fighter aircraft.
That's right. That's right.
So,
I think Mike Verano was involved in that too, because he said as much on CNN that he was with he doesn't name Williams, but it was Williams. With we have an actual motion picture of the UFO, and it was passed to the fighter pilot. Were they F-15 then? They were kind of new, or 16s. I don't know. It was, and we didn't have them. We had the A-10, and it just straight off to NATO and Germany. Went to the Ramstein, and then it went to Washington. There's a paper trail on that diplomatic or Air Force satchel. It was all triple secret, the whole thing. But that's all documented. That's all true. So for nothing happened. That's a lot of gasoline.
Again, what's really helpful is now we have another person who is part of this.
Yes.
When you start looking at chain of custody, who is there. I think
that's right. That's great. That's
and
great.
I think it was Verano who told him, he was on patrol and told him to go out there. But he said before that, he gave a ride to John Burroughs. John Burroughs told him to give him a ride or something. And I think to go back out there to the location after the event. He wanted to walk around, and he's asking John, I don't know if I can do this because you're not in uniform, blah, blah, blah. But he did. And then they were traipsing around, I guess, the area, looking around, and he was trying to get information from John.
Wow.
But it was just, people were, I guess when you're there during daylight, it must be different. It must be like.
I just wish all these people came out all these years ago. I really do. It would have been so much easier.
Oh yeah.
Really.
No.
Yeah, but I think nobody paid attention to it, because if you're not in the UFO community, you're just living your life and stuff. I hadn't even thought about Bentwaters, Woodbridge, or anything for decades until
I got never been in it, but I got stuck in it, didn't I?
Yeah,
I know what you're saying.
Yeah, but after I lost contact with you around the mid '80s and stuff, I never even thought about it until Georgina Bruni called me up one day, and then after that, it's just it's in the forefront a lot. So,
well, that's another project. Nick Pope gotten his fingers into. And again, I have the email to Paul Simon from her, and it says, I've completely backed up Larry's story. I don't know how she could completely back it up, but it's not looking good for Halt, and I've got a big advance. Well, once you read that book, and there was an issue with photographs, I know the whole facts. Georgina were I fine before she died. Her and I, in fact, it was Nick Pope that called me one morning, many 12, 13 years ago now, and said that she had died. He said, well, I'm only letting a few people know right now. And I was shocked, because she had cancer. And I had a New Year's. I said, oh, we're cool. Don't worry. You'll be all right. And off she went. But there has always been dark fingers, dark forces into any good intent.
Yeah.
And you can name them on one hand. When you mentioned Paul Simon, he's another one where his sister in 61, the year I was born in Long Island, they had a amazing incident. It affected them all. Peter shut it off his mind till 75. Helen always just knew it. His sister was a performer, lovely, great soul. And she always knew. And in fact, the thing on board, and these 6, I don't remember the numbers, in V formation coming toward him, broad daylight. Paul Simon's 14, Helen was maybe 12 at the time. And these V-shaped objects coming right toward me. You could see the windows, and kaboom! And all of a sudden, Peter hits the ground. They did something to him. Thank you. And Helen, they took her up. Now, I've always thought, and Peter just blanked it out the rest of his until he was 1975. And then fire. I remember he said Chinatown in New York were having I guess he lived in Chinatown. And there was Chinese New Year, all the fireworks going, and it just triggered that thing. He called his sister and said, can you know, he'd be better to tell it. It's amazing. And he goes, do you remember this thing in 1960? And she goes, of course, I've never forgotten it. And that's where he started his thing. So he was all, you know, he was a very trustworthy, as far as I knew, kind of guy, and was very, you know, he'd been through the stuff. What I always thought with him, which he didn't like, is that I said, I think more happened to you too. I mean, why would they just Helen and not you? Why? And then, of course, when we're researching our book, the very first night, and we almost thought of saying, well, okay, let's change that to the second, because who's going to believe this? We had a massive UFO thing go on. We didn't have a camera. We walked to the base to there was a Burger King now.
I remember that, yeah.
And when we came back, on the way up, we saw weird things zigzag above us. And I said, oh, that's interesting. On the way back, let me tell you guys, you can't, I think he denies it ever happened and he ever knew me now. And I'm not being funny about that. He literally does. And this thing kicked off. But I have the actual audio tapes of this happening. And it was everything. It was almost like everything you'd imagine to happen would materialize right in front of us. It was shocking. And he didn't talk to me.
That was where I would have thought that you know, Peter Robbins would be 100% behind you and your story, because it's like you looking up at
he wrote
this activity and saying, "See, this is it."
Well, we worked together for 30 years, so one would think he must have had something better to do if he wasn't. And so that's the dynamic. But it's very strange, you know, and I don't ponder it too much. Wish him well. But it was shocking, and so much so that we didn't even speak really to each other for a year or so. He went into this kind of meltdown with what happened. I think he thought I was some catalyst for this stuff. I have the whole audio of it going on, by the way, and it's beyond words. I don't talk about it and people go, why didn't you take pictures? Well, I'm not a photographer by nature at all, and he brought a really fancy Nikon. His mom was big in the camera industry and worked for Nikon, I think, and Marcy, lovely. And so I said, well, let's bring black and white film because we're shooting for the book. And so our book section, the photos are dreadful. I mean, but it was the 80s. That's how we tried to understate things. But he didn't have the camera with him. And I remember I went running toward this phenomena. It was just south of Bentwaters base, heading toward Ike. It wasn't near the site of the forest. The forest was in front of us.
Yeah.
And I went running out toward this thing that was in front of us. You see movement. He grabbed me. And he's like, stop. And I'm yelling at it. You words I won't use on here. That's 100% true. It's not about belief in all this. Again, just real quick and I'll shut up. His thing, my thing, is that you stand up for a guy. It didn't help his career that he wanted in UFO because I'm very controversial. Don't mean to be, but I'm very outspoken, and I'll call it spade. That's not good for business. And so he had to suffer all that. And so you're defending someone for revenue, and it's just easier to say, well, we got robbed on our book. It was a Times bestseller. We got ripped off, this and that. Pride blames, me for that or something. Indirectly, and like, well, hell with this. And then when the trolls started and all this bullshit, what he did is just say, this is my out. I'm getting older. This is my out. It's that simple. There wasn't anything else. It was just so simple. It's like any partnership, Lennon McCartney, Sammy and Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis, any kind of thing like that, it always will. And that I believe the out he took, and he took a low end way, but I wish him well. But yes, he had an amazing, and I think my point is, I think more had happened to him, and he used to get I worked with Bud on it. I go, well, I just think there's more to it. Why would you be so obsessed with this subject, and so frightened of it at the same time, because a lot of these people have never seen anything. It's just a joyride at our expense. But with Peter, he's been through the stuff. Absolutely. I'll shut up.
Well, one thing if we go back a little bit when we were just talking about Georgina, because I remember she got a hold of me at Department of Education, and we were talking, and I was like, "Oh, this is exciting," and then I put her in touch with Ken Kern, who was there.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
he had an experience there too.
Mhm.
And but the one thing that I remember distinctly talking to Steve Laplume was about when you got a chance to sit with her in her house or her flat and hang out and talk. I just think she must have been a phenomenal woman, and I think she was
Who
good
who
at
did
her craft.
who did that?
No,
Steve, did you go to her house?
yeah, yeah. At the time, my wife Gigi and I, we were touring London and France
Oh, and
just
nights.
on a vacation, and
All right.
she was going to travel on to, I think she was either going to Hong Kong or Shanghai or something. We weren't living there at the time, and I was heading back to the States. So
Right.
Georgina's like, "Well, just crash at my place, and then you can go to the airport from there." So we drank quite a few bottles of wine and smoked
Oh
a
yeah.
few things and had a good
Yeah,
time, and
yeah, I
pretty
was
kicked
in that.
back.
Yeah.
Peter and I did
What
a
do you think? I mean, from your perspective, knowing Georgina, and I think at that time, uh, Nick Pope's ego was relatively in check. What would
Yeah.
what would you what do you think she would think of him now if she looked at a lot of the BS that
Well, you
comes
know what?
out?
She kind of looked at the case more through like a real true investigator's eye, is how I looked at her. So I
Hmm.
kind of like talking to her because she was more kind of like how Paula is right now. Paula Harris. She just wants the facts, get them out there. You make your own decision. But here's everything I found, type
Yeah.
of thing. And I excuse me, scam callers.
oh yes.
Anyways, um, so yeah, she just I can respect somebody that's trying to investigate something and get some facts out there and get down to the brass tacks of it without putting their narrative in there. And
Hmm.
it's just I know she had her own opinion. Everybody's got their own opinion, but she just seemed like she was a little more true,
Yeah.
true
I went up
investigator.
I met her with Peter when we were on tour, and we did a compus some computer question thing, and she did the typing for us in her apartment in Knightsbridge, right? And there was a lot of wine, and I have a picture, and Nick was there, and his lady friend, who are Michelle, I forget her. So I've been in that, and that was a Knightsbridge. I mean, I liked about her. She was very show busy,
Yeah, yeah,
she was
yeah.
part of the London.
That's what I heard about her too.
But
Yeah.
this was very early internet, people asking questions. It was part of her tour. And that's how I met her in 97. And she ran that. And of course, Crafty Nikki was there. But yeah, there was a lot of things I liked about her. And at the end, we were fine. Had a great talk on a New Year's Eve. And I said, "Oh, you'd be all right, girl." And she wasn't. It was like, a cancer thing.
Yeah.
And but it was Nick that let me know she died early in the morning one day. Called and said, "I'm just letting you know." She didn't want everyone to know this, and I was honored that.
Yeah, when you
Sad,
Yeah.
but
contacted, yeah. Because one
Yeah.
of the things that I was reading about, I was sharing with Larry earlier that I was reading this one review on the book Encounter in Renton Forest, um, by Nick Pope, and I remember back, and I think it was like 2012 or 2011, where it could have been 2013, somewhere in that time frame, when I remember hearing that Jim Peniston and um John Burroughs were getting really excited that they were actually going to be working with an author uh, for at a reputable publisher, and it turned out it was Nick Pope, and they were looking at it that the book was going to be by Nick and his perspective being an investigator, and John and Jim their story getting it out. And then what happened was that it didn't turn out that way at all. In fact, it was pretty much Nick Pope just ran with the book. He said, "Well, he I'm trying to see what it says here. The book appears to have much information which formerly appeared in the book Left at East Gate with Larry Warren and Peter Robbins. It also has an overlay of disinformation. Repeatedly, Nick has woven the thread of information points that are erroneous, all of which drew from Left at East Gate, which he saw in advance of his own book, co-written by Peniston and Burroughs. And he repeated things in the counter book that leads the reader to think that Larry Warren, who wrote Left at East Gate, were not true, thus using the opportunity to discredit Larry and his co-author. And then it says, anyway, it goes on to say that, not to take away from Jim and John Burroughs, he pretty much says this book that Nick Pope wrote was not a second or first-hand bibliography, had no footnotes, bibliography index. This is pretty much just a book written by Nick Pope, who kind of just added a few little things. But
It was a dreadful book.
I know that's why Jim and John both went ahead and said, well, we got to write our own book because this isn't what, And it's interesting because I looked at the title and I noticed it said by, I think it said by, let me see, I want to get it right because people get crazy about this thing. Yeah, it says Nick Pope with John Burroughs and Jim Peniston. And when you look up the word with means technically you're getting information about the story from them, but they're not really telling the story. They just pretty much gave permission to write this story.
Yeah.
It was just,
They chose co-authors, British, by the way, that had both agendas on both of their individual books, and they, both of them, Jim and John, had chosen these two guys that, I had known of them through your page, Lori, before that book came out, or their books came out. And, they were just kind of greasy also, I'm not saying John and Jim, but they just picked this kind of, well, not people I would have, well, then again, but not cool.
well,
Yeah,
maybe,
the English thing is terrible over here with these people. It's terrible. They're weak. They're libelous and slander-based. They're dreadful people. Dreadful.
well, I know for me, I think it was fortuitous in many ways that I was kicked off of the Justice for the 81st Security Police Squadron 1980 Facebook group.
Does that still exist?
I have no idea, but I just know that that's what facilitated me to do the Rendlesham Lone Ranger, because
I remember.
I felt like, damn, once again, I got to do it myself.
I remember when you started that years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. I was really, really happy, and I was really pleased and proud to have so much support from members of the 81st Security Police Squadron, to include Tim, I'm going to pronounce his last name wrong. Rejay? I don't know.
Ersic.
What's that?
Tim Ersic?
Yeah. No, Tim, E-R-G.
Yeah.
And also Ken Kern and several others. I mean, they just seem so supportive.
That's what you need.
It was just a drag that, as a woman in the security police squadron back then, that I did not have the same camaraderie that you guys had, because I didn't live with the people I worked with. I was pretty much off my own. But that's,
well, there was fleeting though, Lori. I mean, because like Steve and I grew, because I have family from Mass, and all my family are from Mass, Boston area, and I've lived in Mass and all that, and so we had that, and we met, but it wasn't everyone, because I met a lot of guys that, frankly, I just as soon get in a scrap with back then. They were all from different places. You're gonna groove, you're younger, and there were people I wasn't too immersed with, at all. But Steve and I, we rolled, man. It was good. Joe, go away off my blinking thing.
Well, I hope,
Uh,
do you have anything else you guys would like to share?
Yeah, I got a question actually. There was a female, I believe she was a police officer. Maybe she was part of security, but she had an experience and they took her off the base pretty quick. Do you know who I'm talking about? I can't remember her name. I just barely remember an incident. Like she saw a UFO, she saw something, she freaked out over
That,
the
Bonnie
that
Temp,
sounds like, yeah, Bonnie, yeah,
was
it's
that
Bonnie
Bonnie?
Temp.
yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
So I never really got the whole scoop on that and stuff like. I'll tell you though, I walked into the security building, you know, where you walked in and you had Sergeant Swain's office and all that, and
Yeah.
I remember her. She was either coming out of Ziegler's office or walking through the door behind me or something, and there was a couple other SPs with her, and she had a deer in the headlight look that day. I don't know. She just looked
Oh
like she
wow.
was traumatized.
Yeah,
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 that would be Bonnie Templin. She
yeah,
was a
Okay.
black woman. If yeah, I don't know if you remember, she was a
yeah.
black
I
lady.
just, it's so funny is, when I was talking to
Wow.
Dale Combs, he thought she'd been on base a lot longer than she had, because she got there in about October. And I
Right.
intentionally went over there. I never would go out of my way to talk to officers off duty or go to their house, but I purposely went over there and just told her to watch her back. I pretty much told her, I said, this
Yeah.
place isn't what it's, just be careful. It's just not what, which sounds kind of cryptic in a way. I
I
mean,
believe
but
her
I
thing.
mainly was trying to say that the leadership that she's working for, they're not going to support you the way they're going to support other people. I mean, the fact that she was a black woman, a woman,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
she had, and she was so nice. I mean, when I met her
Yeah.
then, and I just wanted her to just watch her back. And I remember seeing her right before I left. I was over by the post office at that Quonset hut, and she was walking in. I took a picture of her. I have a photo of her actually, because I was getting ready to leave, so I was taking memory photos of people I knew back then, and so. But she had this look, in her eye, like I got it, I got it. But so I was really sad to hear that. I left on the 15th, and then a few weeks later,
Yeah.
she she had that experience, and you
Well,
know,
for Steve,
What was
I
that
could,
whole experience? I heard she'd lost her weapon. I mean, I'd heard all sorts of weird stuff,
you know
but
she
what,
I don't know
rolled.
brother,
what the truth is.
She
that's
rolled.
all.
She was. I think she was driving toward Eastgate, and I could be wrong about that, but one of those orbs went into the car. Went into the.
Oh,
She was driving this a brand new Jeep, and it went into the Jeep, and then it rolled. She rolled the vehicle. Luckily, she was okay that she got out, but I think she got out of the vehicle, and then she dropped her. I don't know if she shot the weapon off, but I know at one point she did drop the weapon and ran, while all this time screaming for Bob Ball, um, because yeah, that would have scared the hell out of me.
yeah,
I
yeah,
could,
definitely. Huh.
that is all going to be covered.
Mhm.
Dion, wrap up your film, put the paintbrushes down for
Yeah,
people like us, please. It's time. But
yeah.
that will
Sorry.
all be out soon. What's going on with that? Because I didn't know. Now I
Do
know
you
a little
want me to
more.
cut that? Do you want me to cut that out? What I just said?
Um,
Because
no,
I don't
I'm not.
think.
I just want Dion to finish the film for people like us, so we move
Yeah,
on. But there's a few. You do what you wish, but I'm bad for business. But we're getting older here,
yeah.
and there is a couple nuclear bombs coming. I can tell you this. I
Mhm.
won't say. One is coming in print form, and
I
it's nothing to
know.
do with. And
Jerry.
I can't.
Okay.
Oh, did he say? Yeah.
He told me on this podcast. So yeah, yeah,
All right. Okay. And then, so there's one, and unfortunately, he just couldn't wait around, and it benefits us. And then our other friend, where all these things are actually played out in real time, where they happen, and it needs to be wrapped up.
Yeah.
Much as I love everyone, for us, not just us, everyone that was involved,
Absolutely.
the world take it in as they can, but enough.
Yeah.
It's enough. It's time so we can move forward.
Mhm.
So it's not about Hollywood to us.
That's,
Yeah.
Steve, do
Yep.
you have
I
anything
lose.
else you'd like to share?
No, other than I'm starting a new project building a roundhouse with a reciprocating roof, and I'm gonna make a YouTube channel about the build because it's
Oh,
a
that's
very
great.
unique type of build.
Well, we look
So-
forward to seeing that and getting more information on it. And have you been able to see the podcast that we've done on this channel at all?
No, I didn't. Actually, I was going to ask you to resend the link. I had trouble with my phone and
Oh, that's
whole
okay.
computer, everything crashed over here for about a week. So
Yeah.
I just lost a
Well,
lot of stuff.
Well, I know there's still more out there for us all to learn, we can glean on. I just like to hear about these little pieces.
Yeah.
So
I just want to
find
ask
it pretty
Steve how his goat is doing.
Yeah, how's
I'm
your
sorry,
goat?
what was that?
How is the goat? It became famous.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Nova's doing good. Yep, I got her in the emu
Nova.
pen actually right now, trying to keep her away from the horny males till she grows over. So,
I should have such
Oh
trouble.
no!
yeah. Well, I've got a couple of emus, and she needs to stay out from under their feet. They I didn't realize it, but emus stomp their prey. They're pretty vicious. Yeah.
Oh my!
We put some ducks in there just because there's a pond there for the emu, and they did not like the ducks. They were stomping the heck out of them. We had to pull them all back out right away. So, yeah, they got jealous.
All right. Well, give our love
Listen.
to Nova. I love the
Okay.
moon too.
All
They
right.
seem
Well,
to have the
maybe.
babies will name Saturn and Pluto and
Well, you know what? There's going to be, like I said, some
Orb.
things coming up with other entities, and that will be great times. There'll be plenty more we can all expand on, and other people will all be wanting to come on your show, Rory. And Stevie, don't you go nowhere, brother.
No,
Yeah.
I'm right where I'm at.
Yeah, and if you want to go, and I guess with Paula, I guess she's just been busy.
Yeah, she's traveling in Europe right now, and she said when she gets down to Naples, Italy, where her family is, that they're just an older couple. They don't even have Wi-Fi, so there's no way she'll be able to do the podcast. So
Okay.
she
She'll be an
suggested when she
excellent.
gets back, she's at her home and she's finally decompressed, then she'd be a little more intelligent conversation. You know?
Okay.
I just like the three of you guys, Lori, you, and Paula on there. I knew Paula. I like Paula, nice girl, lady.
Well, we got to invite you into the party, Larry.
Yeah, but I talked to I've heard my voice for 40 years. This is what I wanted. Other people, here we are. Who would ever envision this? I mean, John and Jim, we all hung out, but it didn't go the right way.
Yeah.
And but it's going to have to, or at least we're happy with things and the best we can be.
Well, I have been in touch with Gary Osborne also, who helped decipher the enigma.
Yeah, he's the one I'm mentioning because I did tell him if you slander me in your book with Jim, you're going to have a problem. So I'm sorry. Good luck with him.
Yeah, and that's all of that stuff. That was Jim. I mean, that's the reason I didn't like the book that much, because he was kind of like making fun of people and just being a jerk.
Just like he was on the base. So
yeah,
nothing
exactly. Now here's the thing: do we accept that, to say this is authentic? This is the way we were treated, like shit or shabby.
Yeah,
but not shabby chic. Anyway,
yeah, I got too much to say about too many people because I've been around this crap for too long.
I know.
Yes, I'm tainted. So no one gets out alive. You guys do. Love you both.
I love you too, and I love you too, Steve.
Same here.
So glad you guys are doing this with me. It means a lot, because
we got many more coming. Lots more.
It's so cathartic, and I appreciate that. All right. Well, this is God, Aliens, and a Cup of Coffee. Donna was a no-show, but that's okay. We're still welcome to see you.